Trouble, 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 trouble. Trouble, bad dog in my soul since the day I was born.
Hello, everyone. I just received another communication with Daryl Holt. I wanted to share that with you today. And it seems quite interesting. He reveals more information for us. So I'll just let you listen. And you can gain whatever you want to gain from this discussion. But to me, it was insightful in many ways. So thanks for listening, and here it goes. Why have you taken so long to talk to me? That's what Daryl said to me just now. I said I didn't know how often that I needed to speak with you, and I wasn't really clear that I was connecting with you properly. Do you know how hard it is to be alone? He said. To be in your world. It's very difficult. People seem confused. They're anxious over daily things that they don't need to be anxious about. It's kind of this omnipresence. Of a system that becomes overwhelming to everyone. Why do people listen? Why do they allow everything that's said in your news to bring in fear? I feel that so many are desperate, even though they have enough. And the problem is they're not aware of it. They carry this trauma on them like it's a symbol, a magnified element. At least that's what it looks like to me. The intersecting frequencies literally create a form in front of people. Like a badge. I wish they would let go of it. It's hard to be around. I'm asking Daryl, what does this symbol look like? You mean like an etheric color form that is, it sort of looks like it's geometric shape of something in front of them and it has multicolors? He said, that's the one you wear. That's the one he's saying I wear. He says yours looks like more of a protective shield. He said theirs looks more like a cube. He says the colors are different. Some of them even look like a computer piece that's been burnt and charred. Daryl, what do you suppose that looks that means when it's charred like that. He said that's a bad indication for the soul that they're in trouble. That the effects of the frequencies and the trauma of their experience here is being affected deeply and pulling out their life force. They're not dead, but it's like they're dead in a way. He said you could see it in their eyes too, for you that can't see what I'm seeing. You have to realize that there are many ways to see your reality. He said he can see much deeper. He can look through all the intentions, and it appears like layers, almost like you pulling apart a construct and separating it and then seeing how it's actually like dissected and built. He said your world doesn't appear as our world. Somehow this fracturing gets fixed. It's not like that in the future. Our problem is different than yours. He says your problem is that your energy is coming apart at the seams due to what we think is experimentation. Some of the other children are scared to be here. It's almost like walking on a floor and there's nothing. You can see right through it. It's not that your world is no longer solid, but the frequency is pulling and separating quantumly. We think the ones who are doing it are the bad ones. And I asked it, is this the black-eyed children who you think is doing this? You call them the black-eyed children, he said. We don't see them as children at all. They play tricks with your mind and make you think that they're young, but they're actually quite old. Their face isn't as youthful as you think. But yes, we think they have something to do with it, because they're the one element that's both in our world, in the future, in your future. Technically, you're our past. And it's something that I see in both places. I don't see the warriors in your reality. And you might hope that they never come to the past. You're much too vulnerable. You think that you are strong, but you're not all spiritually equipped to encounter such things. Emotionally is where you are the weakest. I think you have a saying, like you're falling apart at the seams. And this is the part that can be corrected easily. But you have to consciously do it. It's not just going to happen. We know how to hold ourselves together, even in the most trying situations. I know you figure it out. Some of you already have. He's now showing me a skyscraper. And he's asking me, oh, why do you build these towers? I said, I don't know. I think they're trying to create more space, bring in more people in a smaller area. He said, you realize it's not necessary. People could be in lots of different places. They don't have to go in all certain locations like this. I'll tell you what I know, he said. They have a purpose in doing this, putting people in clusters who are populating. They use the energy. The people are typically unhappy, but they're driven to be there. They think they have to be there. They make them afraid to live off the land. It's hard to explain, but I can see it. It's like they feel like they want to be surrounded and comforted in a way, but it does just the opposite. I asked, is it like using all of these souls as a battery where they're all compiled in and condensed in one area? He said it's more like they can better control the experiment, he's calling it. So you're saying that we're being observed, and the easier way is to put everyone in one place where it's much easier to watch, kind of like surveillance cameras everywhere. And I asked, it's not just our governments, is it? And he's shaking his head saying no. The governments don't even realize why they're doing what they're doing. There's the tall ones. So the ones that are tall with very skinny, narrow heads. They like things this way. I asked him, oh, what do you call them? Is there a name or a name that I'm familiar with? Are they humanoid, insectoid? Are they the tall Nordics or tall whites that we know about? He said no. He said they're the unseen ones, but we can see them. I said, well, what do you call them back home or where you are from? And he said, We've not seen him in our space. I'm asking when did they arrive on the earth, and how long have they been doing this? We think, he said, at around the 1200s, they started gathering people more into cities and getting them off lands, he said, you call them feudal times. Do you recognize them as being from the system at all? And he said, we're not sure. We think they are from Orion. But I could be wrong, he said. He said they are not good to look at. He said it feels like bad luck when you look at them. I have no other way to describe it. So I'm asking if they oppress the cities. And that's the reason why the cities have this feeling. It's kind of a tense energy, and I typically assume that it had to do with overpopulation. And that people just, aren't getting their proper space. And it creates an irritability. He said no. He said people don't want to live like this. He said this group is accustomed to being over other species that live in clusters like this, like the insectoids, who seem to thrive this way and then feed off of one master, like your bees. And like this hive, like the hive group, I asked him. And he said, yeah. So they're the overlords of some insectoid group and then found its way here. And he said, yes. He said it'd be good if you can get rid of them and send them back to where they belong. He said, humans are not supposed to be treated this way. He just said something like, there is Richard. Am I supposed to know who Richard is? He said, you don't know who Richard is? He said he calls himself the Master Seer. And he called him a time launcher. Tell me what a time launcher is. This is one who helps others launch into time. I think he's not happy that I'm talking to you. Maybe the tall ones told him I was talking to you. Is it possible that he just came because, are you supposed to go somewhere with him, Daryl? He said, no, I wasn't scheduled to go anywhere just yet. I still have work to do, but it almost seems as if he wants me to go somewhere. He's standing there looking at me. Do you have to go? He said, I need to go and explain to him my situation. I'm sorry, I can't talk very long, he said. But I don't want to leave at this time, so I have to talk to him before he takes us. I'll come back and speak to you again. Okay, so that was kind of an impromptu type of conversation. I really felt he was trying to tune into me. I was in a quiet space, so it worked out well. I started to see he was revealing to me the things that he was talking about, and I started to see how if you look at someone, it looked like you could see a separation of their energy field, and that there was this kind of floating energy in the front that I could see why he called it a badge, because the frequencies were all coming in and converging in a central point, and it was sort of around like the heart and solar plex chakra area. The colors were merging, and some of them actually created like triangle shapes, or others. There was some of them that I saw looked like a cube just floating in front of them, which was really weird. And some of them had, we're talking about people, and he was showing me through his point of view what he sees on us. And some of them had this like grayish looking cube. And he said some of them actually looked like the cube was burnt looking, or that the shape seemed to have a burnt look. And he said that had something to do with the life force being taken. So it's like they're alive, but there's so much life force that was taken from them. And he was concerned about that, and yeah, it concerns me as well. It didn't sound right. But he said in the future, he says they don't separate like that energetically. Their body stays together a little better. And he said he's not really sure why it's doing this. It's kind of weird to them, looking at us, I guess, because then they see this. And it's probably uncomfortable, almost like, it's like a deconstruction or a separation of the energy field. And so he wants to thinks that we should all be a little bit more pulled together in a way. And he thinks that it's from some experimentation. He doesn't know if there's maybe a natural reason or if it's from like scalar and some of the quantum computing and other things. It's making us it's not making us lighter, it's making us separate quantumly from ourselves. And so I think he's trying to help us. And he starts talking about these tall beings, and I didn't know who he was talking about, but they sort of remind me a little bit of those guys from Dark City, the way he showed me what they looked like, and they're really tall, and they looked like a robe. They had long, thin faces. They looked kind of old looking, and their head was not bulbous at all. It was just like, it looked somewhat humanoid. And he said that typically they're supposed to be like the overlords over an insectoid species, and instead they somehow came over here during this time period of the feudal times. I'm not really sure what year that is in 1200s, but he said that they established this patterning in us to start not want to, like the feudal times is when people had their own farms, and everyone had their little plot of land, and they planted and grew for themselves. So instead they took us and had humans kind of feel like they needed to just like cluster together in cities and have little land. And especially in some of the cities now, no, people don't have land at all. They essentially are like piled on top of each other in buildings. And so he was, conveying to me that that was not supposed to be the way that humans acted. They're kind of encouraging us to act in a different way as another species would. And I imagine there's other problems that are related to that, where the insectoid species would find this lifestyle appealing and be more present in the cities. And I'm not sure we really want that, because they have a different mindset. And as you observe ants and you observe bees, I mean, they're very, very task oriented and accustomed to answering to one, like a queen bee. And someone essentially working together, they're all working together in a hive mind. We're not supposed to be in a hive mind. And so these overlords have been, slowly but adapting us into this style that isn't quite necessary. Because he asked me, he goes, why do you have those high-rise buildings? And I wanted to ask him about 9/11, but for some reason the conversation couldn't come up. And that's when this guy, two things happened while we were recording. There were fireworks that came up out of nowhere. Someone just set off fireworks right near the door. And, right, close to the area of, where we are at. And then, so we had a pause, and then this guy, Richard, shows up. He says, Richard is here, and he is going to, he wants me to stop talking about what I'm talking about. Like, in other words, he doesn't want me talking about the overlords or explaining certain things. And then he was encouraging Daryl to maybe return back or go ahead and travel again. And Daryl was going to have to hold his ground and say he didn't want to leave just yet. So that ends the conversation. I have a feeling I'll be talking to him again. He asked me not to wait so long when he has a message or wants to talk to me to be there. So that is the most recent message with Daryl Holt. He seems to be okay, but we are able to get a little bit more information from him. So thank you for listening today.
She made me laugh.